You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
You play to win the game. That's what it is all about, people. You play to win the game. Well, good Sunday morning, friends. Mark Holmes here, of course, with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo and the Funky Chicken. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. Man, we are knee deep in the NFL season and, off season, knee deep in it. And this week is the combine. Now, a lot of people are like, oh man, I don't want to watch the damn combine. You know, it's guys in shorts running around doing a whole bunch of stuff. And this is true, but this is also the opportunity for teams to start getting to work. You'll actually hear about contracts that are going to be done. They don't get become official until the beginning of the league year, but you've got the owners, you've got the GMs, you've got the scouts, you've got the players, you've got the agents all there in Indianapolis, and they start doing a whole lot of talking. And let's hope and pray that the Dallas Cowboys get to work with Micah Parsons, get that out of the way, get that extra cap space. Now, my fear here is the Cowboys are actually in a better position than we typically are. The thing that's funny to me is there's perception and there's reality. For example, every year it's always pants on fire for the Dallas Cowboys because of their finances. At the moment, as we sit here at this moment, the Cowboys have $2.5 million of cash, which sounds terrible. But typically at this point, we're usually about 25 to 30, sometimes 35 million under. And we start the process of restructuring Tyron Smith, Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, and things just to get to zero to start the offseason. Now, that $2.5 million doesn't take in consideration the $18 million that's going to roll over from last year where they didn't spend it. It doesn't take into consideration the additional money that's going to be coming in once they get the final number for how much the salary cap is going to go up, which is, as I predicted, when everybody was saying doom and gloom, the salary cap, it'll only go up 10. At best, it might go up 20. And I told you I thought it was going to come in at 283. A couple weeks ago, I said I think the salary cap will come up around 283. It may not come up quite that high, but I was closer than most people were. So the Cowboys have some extra room right there. The question begs is, will the Cowboys look at this and say, well, shit, we can take that new money and we can pay our old bills. Instead of saying, we're going to take that new money and we're going to create some more by restructuring contracts. It's the kind of guys we have. It's kind of like the stimulus checks when they used to say, because of COVID or tax breaks and things like that. People who needed the money, they went out and immediately spent the money and it helped the economy. People who had money, we just put it in the bank and the savings accounts, in which case it didn't do anything. Because, see, when you take that money and you spend it, it not only goes from your pocket, it goes to the store, it goes to the manufacturer. So it just kind of makes a ripple effect, and it does more good spending it. If you save it, it doesn't do any good. So it's great that the Cowboys could go through and say, you know what? Maybe we don't take the trigger on Dak Prescott. We'll do the one for CeeDee Lamb, and we'll take the money that we have rolling over, and we'll just do very minimal. It will be a better financial footing down the road. For me, like Walker Wade, who was pissed off yesterday during our live stream, the Cowboys need to do some shit now. We're not caring about 5 years down the road. I might be dead in 5 years. I might be dead. There's no guarantee. I could get hit by a truck. I could find out I got cancer. I could just have a heart attack. There's no guarantees of 5 years down the road. The Cowboys have always had this mentality of, We don't want to be in cap hell. We want to stay relevant. Well, what happened last year? Were you relevant? And I dare say the Cowboys, it's getting harder and harder to find content on them from the talking heads. They're beginning to move away from the Cowboys. And even the usual hype of players being traded, everybody is kind of like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Everybody knows the Cowboys aren't making bold moves, so they're hardly even talking about it anymore. They're talking about Myles Garrett, who I believe is going to stay in Cleveland. They're hyping up that the Eagles will try and get him. They've kind of moved on from the Cowboys even being in the equation anymore. That's how far down the totem pole the Cowboys have sunk. Now, I originally started out this morning, and I was doing my research and stuff, and I was going to talk about, forgive me, I'm sorry, I have congestion. I was going to talk about Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele and what we do on the offensive line. But I'm going to save that for later because I realized something that's really interesting that may kind of change the thought process of it. Should we go ahead and get Jeanty? It seems like it's a no-brainer. They tell us that, the Cowboys have problems at running back. Everybody puts up their numero uno thing the Cowboys need is running back. That's what they keep putting up there. The Cowboys, no-brainer. If you go through and some of the predictions, they'll go through with the biggest needs for teams. The Cowboys are the only one that they have as number one need, running back. And I'm going to say, I'm not sure that that's the spot. We may actually be better at running back if they hold on to Rico. Now, if we let Rico walk, well, that's a different story. Then, yes, running back will definitely be in need. But the Cowboys may have actually done something right for once. When we let go Tony Pollard, and part of the problem with Tony Pollard was what I thought was true. Tony Pollard is not an inside runner. And Tony Pollard is best suited to be a receiving running back, a guy that's going to do sweeps on the outside. If he's got to run between the tackles, his body is not good to do that. And when we got rid of Zeke without having a pounder for the middle and said, you're going to do double duty, you saw his numbers drop off a cliff and him becoming like an average running back. Be that as it may, he still got paid and went to Tennessee. But here's the thing that's kind of really crazy to me in looking at the numbers this morning. Let's take a look. If we look at the numbers here, they both had 1,079 yards. Okay. But you look at the rushing attempts, you'll see that Rico had 25 less than Tony Pollard, and that Rico averaged actually 4.6 yards per carry. Now, the knock you could say on Rico is he didn't get a lot of rushing touchdowns, but I'm going to say that's also a product of the Cowboys' red zone issues and having Cooper Rush as a starting quarterback versus having Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's going to open up things more than you will with Cooper Rush. I'm just saying, it just will. And if you think about where our offensive line was last year, which was really in flux, you can't look and say we had great rush, that we had a great offensive line. You cannot make that argument one way or the other. When you think about Tyler Guyton, with the amount of penalties, the amount of pressures, the games he missed, was not good. To go from Tyron Smith being an all-pro the year before to Tyler Guyton was it was terrible. Tyler Smith, of course, great. Cooper Beebe was really good coming out as a rookie. Zach Martin injured most of the season. Brock Hoffman actually came out and played well. And then you had Terrence Steele, who's an enigma, who is great runs blocking. He's top 15 in run blocking, but like in the 70s at pass blocking. No rhyme or reason. But we'll deal with Terrence Steele and whether the Cowboys should cut him or not in a later point. But the thing that's crazy about this is when we look at this is the Cowboys should be charged with malpractice, because when you dig deeper into Rico's numbers, Rico actually was pretty damn good. His rushing yards average, only 4 games that he had where he was under 4 yards a carry. And as we go through the numbers here and we start looking at the games, the thing that kills you the most is the fact that, why does this look funny? 12:22. Why is this not in order? Oh, that's by his best games. Okay. There we go. Washington, Cleveland. For some reason, it got out of order. That was weird because it had Tampa Bay at the bottom. Okay, let's try it again. When you look at what the Cowboys did with him, it's kind of insane because the first game against Cleveland, 3.3 yards. But against New Orleans, 4.3 yards, 4 yards, 4.2, 4.4, 5, 6.3, 4.4. The thing is you start looking at the attempts. It wasn't until the Pittsburgh game that he actually had 20 attempts in a game, which was his breakout game. He had 87 yards. It wasn't like he wasn't rushing well before that. But then here you go against the Lions. He got 5 carries. He averaged 5 yards a carry. But he got 5 carries. Against Atlanta, he averaged 6.3 yards a carry. He got 12. And so it wasn't until you got to Washington that he really started carrying the load more and closing in on around 20 plus yards per carry. But even when you look at Cincinnati, 18 carries, 7.3 yards. Now, granted, Cincinnati's defense was not great. Carolina, 25 carries, 149 yards. Even Philadelphia, against the Eagles, 23 carries, 104 yards. He was a lot better than what you think when you're talking about a team that, for the most part, was always behind and having to pass more with a bad offensive line. So when you look at this, and for example, let's take him against, say, Bijan Robinson. Now, you're going to go ahead and say, Mark, you are freaking crazy if you're trying to compare Rico Dowdle to Bijan Robinson. And I'm not trying to say that Rico is anywhere near what Bijan Robinson is, but Bijan only averaged 0.2 of a yards more per carry than Rico did. He also had 70 more carries than Rico did. So he got 1,456 yards. If you gave him the ball more, you would have been looking at a running back that would have actually had quite a bit of yards. So digging even further into this, when you start looking at this, Rico was 15th in running in actual rushes, 235 attempts. So you start looking at this and saying the Cowboys really should have locked in on using Rico sooner than they did. He should have been your lead back. The fact that you were taking and putting Zeke in here at this point, when you figure that Rico only had 4 games of under 4 yards a carry, when was the last time you've seen Zeke have 4 yards a carry anymore? He just didn't. And so you can start looking and saying, he's not that bad. So then this begs the question, do you look at this and say, we need to go all out on running back and getting Ashton Jeanty to go with Rico? Or do you look at it and say, I want another running back, but I'll get one later in the draft? My thought is this. If you have a good offensive line, an average back will be better. I can say Darren McFadden, who was at the Raiders before he came to the Cowboys and averaged 3.3 yards a carry and kept getting injured. When he came to the Cowboys, he averaged about 4.5 yards a carry because the offensive line of the Cowboys was that much better. You can take Saquon Barkley, who was with the Giants, And his best season, he averaged 5 yards a carry with a bad team. He goes to the Eagles, and he ends up averaging 5.8 yards a carry and gets a 2,000-yard season. I'm not going to say that Saquon is a better running back now than what he was when he was younger. Maybe he is. But I have to say him being on a better team makes him a better player. So the question begs is, do you take that premier pick and put in another running back where you actually had a guy who played better than what people think and use that on a position, maybe the line, maybe the defensive line, maybe a wide receiver in an area where you look at it and say, yeah, Jalen Tolbert had 600 yards, but I need a better number 2. That's the argument that the Cowboys have to be making now in the assessment. I honestly look at it and say, in the same way people look at Osa Odighizuwa and say, $20 million for Osa Odighizuwa, is it better to take that $20 million and get yourself 2 or 3 really good players to play on the defensive line to be better across the board than just one position? I don't have the answer for that. I'm just trying to put it out there on what you want to look at when we sit here and we talk about this. I'm not sure that taking and saying, we've got Rico, if we re-sign him, we got Rico who is coming back and end up having Ashton Jeanty back there and then having an offensive line that's not good. Just food for thought. Now, the nice thing is our new offensive coordinator, Caden Adams, he thinks there's a lot of pieces to work with. And I have to kind of agree with it. So you can be the mad scientist with like the offensive line and things like that you've got a quarterback, you've got a wide receiver. Now the question is can I get the most out of these players? When you think of this, Tony Wise, who was the offensive line coach for the Dallas Cowboys for Jimmy Johnson. The Cowboys during the 90s, there were no first-round draft-picked offensive linemen there. They took Mark Tuinei, who was a defensive tackle, and made him an offensive tackle. They took Mark Spagnowski, who was a undersized guard, and made him a center. They took a Nate Newton, who was rejected by the Redskins because they said he was too fat, and played in the USFL. They took late-round draft picks like Eric Williams and Kevin Gogan and things, and made one of the greatest offensive lines in football because they were able to coach them up. As Jimmy Johnson said, can you make Mark Spagnowski a center? We'll coach him up. We'll make him that guy. And this is where I wonder if we've gotten the most out of the players with the coaching staff that we've had. I feel like we've got a younger staff that, maybe they're a little wet behind the ears, but I think they'll relate better to the players. And all of them seem to be respected on what they've done. Some of them have been in college, but they're well respected, and I think they're well suited to work with the players. Ultimately, time will tell. And let's listen to a little bit of Caden Adams because I really do like listening to some of the guys that we have now on the coaching staff.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's it. I'm Clayton Patrick Walker, DallasCowboys.com.
Nice to meet you.
Same here. Can you just talk about your decision to come join the Cowboys and, what you take away from your time with the Cardinals that you can use to kind of benefit your time here?
Sure. Obviously, for myself and being a background of an offensive line coach, the opportunity to be a coordinator and to sit in that chair was important to me and had been a goal, something that I wanted to do at some point. Obviously, I think being able to do it with the Dallas Cowboys is a huge, even bigger opportunity, great franchise. Speaking on, kind of what I've learned in my time in Arizona, we really had a great experience there. And the organization was outstanding to me and my family, the head coach, the players. I didn't get to be there when they got the thing completely turned, but I was excited about the direction that we were going, and I know that those guys will do a good job there.
Joe Hoyt, All City Dallas, in Arizona, you had James Conner, some linemen coming back. Here, there's a lot of questions about the running back room. There's a lot of openness. You know, only got a couple guys coming back. How much do you look at that as an opportunity in the run game to kind of find guys to maybe tailor fit what you're looking for?
You know, I don't know that we've completely gotten that far yet. We're working hard to evaluate what we have here, and I think that there's a lot of nice pieces to work with, and we'll continue to go down that road as we work through player acquisition, and then obviously when we get our opportunity to get our hands on these guys and coach them a little bit, but probably a little bit too early to know that.
Clayton, Todd Archer with ESPN. What's your background with Brian Schottenheimer? And now is it kind of just learning what he wants, how it meshes with what you've done in the past? Where are you guys in that process of scheme-wise?
Yeah, that's exactly where we're at, is just trying to mesh what the vision of what he wants is, because he's going to call the plays, and so I think it would be dumb on my part to try to force a lot of things on that call sheet that he doesn't want to call or he doesn't feel comfortable calling. So I have not had a major background with him. I had talked football with him in the past. I had known him a little bit, but we're really excited. I'm very excited to work with him and just to continue to learn each other a little bit. And I think that that's always going to be a process of, we're all molded a little bit by our experiences. And so there's going to be, we're going to get out into some practices and talk through some things, and I'm going to see some things differently. He's going to see some things differently, and it's going to be a growing process. You get into games and you have to have those same type of experiences, both good and negative.
Clarence Hill, All City DLLS. Can you talk about your relationship with Riley and being with offensive line coach? How much will you be a part of the offensive line, or will you stay away from that?
I definitely won't stay away from that. I think that it's a little bit to be determined exactly how all those things are going to work, because I think we need to get out and coach these guys a little bit, and we need to get past the point where we're just all trying to speak the same language, which is kind of where we're at right now. In regards to my involvement with the offensive line, is I want to have a great relationship with all these guys, and I really want to build genuine relationships so that they know that I'm here to help them play the best football of their careers, and that they know that we're going to have a very clear and communicated standard for what we expect from them. For me, that's going to start in the offensive line room, and I'm very excited about developing a relationship with those guys. But also, like I said, I need to have that same relationship with Dak. I need to have that same relationship with CD. So my time's going to be spread a little bit more in that way. But it's going to start in the offensive line.
Background with Riley.
Yeah, and Connor is. I've actually known him a long time. He and I have never worked together. We've talked football many times. Spent, for guys that have never worked together, probably a fair amount of time together. And then I always think this is, you can assess offensive lines or any position group really when you're evaluating what you think that a coach does, but nothing speaks like the tape. And one thing that I've always respected about Connor Riley over the years of just evaluating his players coming out in the draft and even just evaluating his scheme when I was coaching in college, the players play good. And he's had good players too. But that's your responsibility as a position coach, is what's on the tape. Are they doing it right? Are they playing violent? Are they finishing? Those are the things that you look for.
Hey, Watkins, Dallas Morning News. How much have you had a chance to talk to Dak or CD or any other veteran offensive player?
Yeah, I mean, I've reached out to them for sure. Obviously, they're in a situation, right now where they're not allowed to be around the building and doing football things. But every
so
opportunity
you can't really get to know
that I have, I do, and I've been really excited about the experience to be able to get to know those guys a little bit, and it's going to be even more awesome looking forward.
Hey, Clayton, with the Associated Press taking this job without the play calling component, do you feel like it's something where you can kind of grow into this? Is play calling something you'd like to do down the road, and how do you view this as sort of your opportunity to kind of learn the ropes of being a coordinator?
That's a good question. I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective before. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to feel like down the road or any of those things, to answer your question, but I am excited about the opportunity and the fit for what I think that this job is going to be, which, really is trying to figure out, at the end of the day, our job when we're putting things on the call sheet is to be problem solvers. And so we're trying to figure out what do we do good and how do we make that look multiple? How do we make that look different? And so that's the part that I'm really looking forward to focusing on. And I think it's also it's a leadership position within a great organization. So that's the part that I'm looking forward to the most. And the answer your question about down the road, I don't know yet.
Hey, Josh Colantino, Lone Star Live. Jonathan Gannon was, formerly a first-time coordinator. He used that experience to become a first-time head coach. What takeaways do you have from your time with him, and how was he supportive throughout this process?
It's a good question. It's really the first time that I had worked for somebody that I was close friends with before. We were assistant coaches together in Indianapolis, and so we had a prior relationship that really transcended just being coworkers or in that situation, boss and employee. I think that, one of the things that Jonathan does as good as anybody else is set the tone for the environment of serving the players. And I was very impressed with the way that he did that, of just ensuring that everything that we do is going to be about helping these guys play good.
Garrett Podell, CBS Sports.
I'll go ahead and end it right there. But you can see that I really believe that he is going to be good for the Cowboys. And hopefully we can get ourselves back on track. All right, good people, as always, I appreciate you. Peace out.